Okay, you ready for this? We're going deep on an intense piece of writing today.
Intense how?
It's a first-hand account of homelessness. Someone living out of their car in December. Just reading it, you feel the chill.
Oh, wow.
But even more than that, you feel this anger.
Yeah.
This disillusionment, like being abandoned by the systems that should be helping. And it really hit me hard, I gotta say.
Well, you know what strikes me is how raw and honest it is. It's not just a complaint about being homeless.
Right.
It's like they're pointing the finger at society, at all the people they think have failed them.
And they're not shying away from naming names either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's Claudia from Sodexo. The author says she was a manipulative boss.
Wow.
And there's even this guy at Papa John's. They just call him out as a fraud. They even bring up their own family.
Oh, wow.
Their baby mama and ex-wife.
Yeah.
Accusations of betrayal, deceit, heavy stuff.
It is, but that's what makes it so powerful. This is a cry for help. This person feels broken by the system, by the people around them. It's unsettling, sure, all that anger and blame, but it gives us a glimpse into their headspace.
So instead of just dismissing it as someone lashing out,
Right.
what can we learn from it? What's behind all that anger?
Well, try putting yourself in their shoes. Homelessness, the daily struggle, the loneliness, that's gonna be traumatic. Triggers some serious emotions. Sometimes focusing that blame on people is a way to cope when the whole system's failing you, you know?
It's like trying to find something solid to hold on to when everything feels chaotic and wrong.
Yeah.
But there's also this bigger critique going on in the piece.
Yeah.
They talk about being blacklisted from jobs, facing discrimination because of their age, their race.
Sounds like you're saying
The American dream is a broken promise.
And that's where things get really interesting. The author feels that the system is rigged. Certain groups are set up to fail from the start. There's one line that really stuck with me. How are white people homeless?
Yeah, I remember that.
You've been given every resource, every opportunity. It's powerful. Makes you think about privilege.
It definitely makes you think. So how do we reconcile that? The anger at people, but then this bigger critique of society? Are they separate or?
I think they're totally connected. Think of it like this. When someone's drowning, they might lash out at whoever's closest,
Makes sense.
even if that person is struggling too. Desperation, fear, they can warp your judgment, make you blame even when it doesn't make sense.
That's a powerful analogy.
Well,
So while we have to look at the big issues like racial bias and lack of opportunity,
right.
we also can't forget the personal pain, how those issues impact individuals.
Absolutely. And this piece, it really brings that pain to the surface. It shows that feeling of isolation that can just crush you. They mention their family, their friends, they're either gone or no help. It's this constant image of drowning, of being abandoned, no one throwing a lifeline.
And then there's that line, it's chilling. If I died today, I'd be okay with it. Hard to even grasp that level of despair.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the role of social isolation in all this.
Being isolated, especially in a crisis, is devastating. It makes mental health challenges worse. It fuels that hopelessness. Escaping feels impossible. But it's bigger than just this author. It points to this huge issue of mental health stigma and the lack of resources, accessible resources for those who need them.
It's heartbreaking. It's like they're shouting into the void, hoping anyone will hear.
Right.
But they're not just hoping, are they? They're using hashtags. Hashtag white privilege, hashtag black disillusionment, hashtag systemic failure. Like they're trying to send a message, maybe start a movement.
You're picking up on something important. They're not just expressing their own pain.
Right.
They're connecting it to these bigger societal issues. That's where social media is so powerful. It gives marginalized people a voice, lets them reach a bigger audience. What do you think about the hashtags they chose?
They all point to that feeling of being let down, not just by people, but by society itself. Calling out the broken promises, the systems that are supposed to protect, but instead leave people stranded.
And that's exactly what we'll explore further. How individual pain connects to these systems of power and inequality. Trying to understand the forces that make someone feel like they're drowning with no way out. And, you know, going back to that idea of broken promises,
Yeah.
this isn't just about changing society as a whole. It's a personal plea for understanding.
Connection.
You can feel that loneliness in every line.
Right.
This feeling of being invisible.
Yeah.
Like nobody sees them as a human being with a story.
Exactly. We talk about homelessness like it's a social problem,
Right.
but it's easy to forget these are real people
Yeah.
caught in the system.
Yeah.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we move from talking about policy to actually connecting with people?
I think it starts with perspective. trying to see the world through their eyes. You know, feeling what it's like to sleep in your car in the middle of winter. Believing the world doesn't care about you.
Empathy is so important, and it means we have to challenge our own assumptions.
Yeah.
The author talks about white privilege directly.
It forces us to confront those inequalities.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even if we haven't experienced those barriers, they still exist for other people.
It's a wake-up call for sure. These issues might not touch our lives, but they're happening all around us. So what can we actually do about it? How do we go beyond feeling bad and actually contribute to solutions?
It might sound too simple, but small acts of kindness can make a difference.
Really?
A warm meal, a listening ear, just acknowledging someone instead of looking away.
Yeah.
Those gestures mean a lot to someone who's struggling.
There's that idea that individual actions can't solve a problem as big as homelessness.
Right.
But what I'm hearing you say is it's not just about the big solutions.
Right.
It's about those personal connections.
Exactly. They offer immediate relief, a sense of hope, and those individual actions, they work together with pushing for systemic change. Supporting organizations that are fighting homelessness, contacting politicians to demand better policies.
Right.
Those actions are crucial too. Use your voice. Make a difference.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Personal empathy and action alongside pushing for change in the systems that create these problems. Go back to the piece, there's that part where the author talks about feeling blacklisted from jobs.
Yeah.
Facing discrimination because of their age and race. Makes you wonder, how much of homelessness is personal choices? And how much is these systemic barriers that make it impossible to get back on your feet?
That is the question, isn't it? It challenges those misconceptions we have about homelessness. We focus on individual failures, blaming people for their circumstances,
Right.
without looking at the bigger picture. It's
Yeah.
easier to look away, to tell ourselves homeless people are lazy or deserve to be there. The reality is so much more complex.
It's like we're programmed to think that success or failure is all on the individual.
I know.
But this piece is telling us to look beyond that, isn't it?
Absolutely. Systemic problems,
Yeah.
racial bias in hiring, lack of affordable housing, inadequate mental health support. These all contribute to homelessness. You can have all the willpower in the world, but if the system's against you, it's an uphill battle.
Like running a race with a weight strapped to your back.
Exactly. You can push for a while, but it wears you down.
Yeah.
And that's why this piece is so powerful. It's not just one person's story.
Yeah.
It shows us the bigger societal issues we can't ignore.
It reminds us that these aren't abstract problems.
Right.
They have real consequences for real people.
Yeah.
It comes back to that image of someone alone in their car,
Yeah.
freezing, forgotten.
That image needs to stay with us.
Yeah.
It should drive our empathy, our compassion, our desire to make a difference. This isn't just about homelessness.
Right.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity, understanding that we're all connected, that even in the darkest times, there's always a glimmer of hope.
And that brings us to the question.
Yeah.
How do we turn that glimmer into something more? How do we turn empathy into action? I guess that's what we'll explore in the last part of our deep dive. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've seen that raw emotion from the author, right? Explored how those systemic failures contribute to homelessness.
Right.
Talked about how devastating that social isolation can be. But now what? Where do we go from here?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like these problems are too big to fix.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest takeaway from all this is that even small actions can make a difference. It can cause a ripple effect.
So you're saying even though we can't fix everything ourselves,
Right.
we can still make a real difference. What would that look like?
Absolutely. There are the tangible things, of course, volunteering at a shelter, donating to organizations fighting homelessness. Those actions have a direct impact. But it goes even deeper than that.
Deeper how?
It's about our mindset, challenging those prejudices we all have about homelessness. You know, those assumptions we talked about, that homeless people are lazy or made bad choices. We have to get rid of those ideas.
You're right. It's about remembering that we're all human. Anyone could end up facing these challenges. So empathy is a start. But how do we deal with those systemic issues, the ones that cause homelessness in the first place?
That's the key question. Empathy is important, but it has to lead to action.
Right.
And there are so many ways to act. Call out discrimination when you see it.
Yeah.
Support affordable housing initiatives in your community. Pressure your elected officials to create better policies.
So it's multi-layered, right? Individual kindness and then pushing for bigger societal change.
Exactly.
Feels like a lot, though.
It is, but even small actions, remember, that ripple effect. Think back to the author. They felt abandoned,
Yeah.
like nobody cared at all. how do we as a society fight that? How do we create a culture of support for people who are struggling?
That's a tough one.
It is. But I think listening is the first step. Really hearing the stories of people experiencing homelessness, understanding their struggles, amplifying their voices.
Like the author did with this piece of writing.
Exactly. We need to create spaces where those stories can be shared, where people feel safe asking for help.
So instead of pretending they're invisible,
Yeah.
we need to see them, hear them, build bridges, not walls.
I couldn't have put it better myself. We need communities where everyone feels valued, supported, no matter what their circumstances are. This deep dive, it wasn't just about understanding one person's experience with homelessness.
Right.
It was about challenging ourselves to do better, be better.
This piece definitely gave me a lot to think about,
Good.
a lot to wrestle with.
And that's good. Discomfort can lead to growth. And even though these issues are heavy,
Yeah.
I think there's hope here too.
Hope that change is possible.
Exactly. Hope leads to action. And action, even a little bit, can change lives, change communities. So, to everyone listening, what will your ripple be? What small act of kindness, what bold step towards change will you commit to today? Because even the smallest ripple can help create a wave of compassion, a wave that lifts everyone up and leaves no one behind.